Hello, my name is Paul Barnhurst, founder of the FP&A Guy. Today we're going to talk about tabular data in Excel, why it is important to structure your data in a tabular format, and how using a tabular format will make it easier to use Power Query, pivot tables, and Power Pivot when conducting your analysis in Excel. We have here on the screen the file we're going to use for today's exercise. The first sheet here talks about tabular data and the 5 rules for tabular data. The easiest way to think of tabular data is nothing more than data that is formatted to go into an Excel table that doesn't include blanks, deleted spaces, columns in the wrong place, that it's formatted in such a structure that Excel can easily use it and analyze it. We are then going to talk about putting that into a pivot table and then comparing that to how data that is summarized works in a pivot table and how you can easily clean that up with Power Query. And then also messy data and how you can structure and clean messy data in Power Query to easily put it in a pivot table for analyzing and summarizing your data. So let's go ahead and start with tabular data. The 5 rules around tabular data are: 1, your column headers are in one row. We can see here in this example, there are 4 column headers. They're all in the same row. Rule number 2, each data record is in one row, and each row contains a complete record set. As you can see here, each row contains a complete record set. There's no nulls, there's no blanks, there's no widget 1 on one line, date on a number line. The third rule is there's no blank rows in the data. You should delete any and all blank rows. So you can see here in this example, there is a blank row. You would delete that out. If you include that, it can cause you to have to sort through extra things when you put it in a pivot table, and it can cause issues in other ways of analyzing your data. Number 4, do not include subtotals in the data. Only include base level, i.e. the most granular data in the record set. So you should never have subtotals. You should only have the base level. There shouldn't be totals. And then number 5, the 5th rule is each column houses its own type of data. So you can see here in the file, you have product, you have month, you have category, you have amount, and each of those are in separate columns. So if we go over and look at summarized and messy data, you'll see they don't follow these rules, and we'll talk more about that later. In the summarized data, you can see the dates are in columns instead of being in one column. So you're not following that rule of breaking out your data separately in each column and row, because you have cells with the date here and then the numbers here. And then in messy data, you have situations where you have headers in multiple rows. We can see June and 2021. You can see a blank row. You can see subtotals, null values, many areas where they violate that rule. So now we're going to go here to tabular data and just show you how easy and clean it is when I put it into a pivot table. So here, I'm just going to highlight this table, go to Insert, click Pivot Table, and then we're going to go ahead and insert the table in the existing worksheet. We're going to put it here in row 23. Click OK, and we can see we have a pivot table. Real quick, we're going to drag the months here in the columns, the amount to the values, the products to the rows. We'll put the category in the filters. Couple quick things we notice we can do here just to kind of clean this up real fast and show how easy it is to work with. I can go to the values, and I can quickly change the summary there to whatever I want. I can group my dates however I want. I can come here and take out this months, and then I can click on this and say group. And in this case, we're going to do a group by quarter. So we're just going to do quarters and nothing else. We've grouped it. And then I can also group my categories together. So I'm going to do group here. And we're going to group that and call that gadgets for group 1, widgets for group 2. Come over here, and we'll name this widgets. So we'll call this product grouping. And what that allows me to do is I can take the products off the table, and now I just have those grouped together. So now I'm going to show you what happens if we try to do that with summarized data. So we're going to go here to the next screen, and we're going to look at summarized data. As you can see in this summarized data, it's not in the format we want for tabular data. So what happens when we go ahead and put it in a pivot table? So first we'll turn it into a date. into a table. We'll name our table here. We'll name it summarized underscore data. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to insert pivot table and put it into a pivot table. So I'm going to go from table range, existing worksheet. We'll drop it down here. And we're not going to go through all the details. You can see in the completed file what it would look like. But all I'm going to highlight is the difficulty in making it look like the other one. We have subtotal and total here. And I have to put the dates here. So now I no longer have dates in the column. So this is very inefficient for a pivot table. It doesn't work for conducting analysis. There's no way to group it into quarters. And there's some other issues with the numbers. Right now they're wrong till I filter these out. So now we're going to talk about how we can use Power Query to fix that problem. And before I jump into the Power Query screen, I just want to go here and show you that I have a couple slides that are in the file that walk through what Power Query is. The quickest way to think of Power Query is an ETL tool, extract, transform, load tool. I like to think of three key things for Power Query. It's designed to combine files together, which we won't cover in this course. It's designed to clean and transform files, which we will focus on, and automate the refresh process, which we'll also show you as we go through this. You can further see details about the Power Query interface, which I'm going to walk you through here in a minute. But you can refer back to this sheet to see the understanding of the different screens you'll work with in Power Query. So now if we go to our summarized data, we're going to highlight this data, and we're going to click on Data. In Data, there's this section called Get and Transform Data, Queries and Connections and Data Types. That all relates to Power Query and working with data in Power Query. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on From Table Range, and it's going to go ahead and load that table into Power Query. You're going to see this come up. Microsoft has identified a potential security concern. Go ahead and click OK. If you don't want to see that, you go into your settings and change the way it views Power Query. So here we have the Power Query screen. I'm going to go ahead and walk through each of these tabs, what it is, how it's laid out, and then show you how easy it is to fix this data so it can be in a tabular or a proper data structure. What we can see here is Power Query. Power Query is, like I said before, Microsoft's ETL tool. We're going to use it to transform this data and load it. What you're going to see when you come in is you're going to have a File button up at the top. If you click File, it gives you an opportunity to decide what you want to do with this query. If you want to load the file, discard it, change your settings. And then from there, you have the Home button. On the Home button, you have the ability to keep rows, remove rows. Like I could highlight there, go to Keep Row and keep the top row or the bottom row. You can remove a range of rows. You have the ability to merge queries, which is similar to an XLOOKUP or an index match. Append queries, which would be combine them together. And some other options here on the front page around properties, etc. Next, you have the Transform tab. This is where you go and make changes to the data. If I highlight a number here, you can see everything becomes available. I have the opportunity to group the data so I can summarize it together, similar to a pivot table. I can transpose things. I can count rows. There's this tool called Pivot and OnPivot, which we'll talk more about in a minute. I can split the columns. I can perform math operations. Here I can add a new column to it. So I can add columns to my data. I can add columns from examples, which is similar to flash fill. I can use a custom column, which is one I can write on my own. A conditional, which basically uses if-then logic to decide what to do based on your data. So I could have a column that says, hey, if this is greater than 661, say true. If it's less than 661, say false. And you have some other options here. And then finally, you have the view where you can go in and you can see information about your data. So I can do a distribution, a profile of my data, one that shows the quality, if there's errors, if it's valid. I can also go in and look at the code behind Power Query. I'm not going to go over the menu bar much more. There are a lot of examples you can use out on the web that you can easily find by Googling it that will take you through it in more detail. So what we're going to do now is we're going to convert this data to a tabular format. So you see I have the months here. I need to take these dates and get them in the rows. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight column 1. I'm going to do a transform function. So if you see there's this on pivot columns, I'm going to highlight it and say on pivot other columns. So what that's going to do is it's going to on pivot all the dates and put them in 2 columns. So you can see the headers are here, the values are here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to get this in a date format. Right now it has the date and then the word cells. So I'm going to need to split this column. So again, on the transform menu, there's this split column. I'm going to click on it, say split column by delimiter. Come in here, do custom, do it by a space, do the leftmost delimiter, so the first space, and click OK. So now I've split that out. So now there's 3 things I want to do. First, I want to make sure this is a date format. As you can see, when you click here in the corner of it, it gives you the options of the different date types. Here it says date, so it looks like it did change that to date. Next one here, it has it as text, so that's fine. And then that one there has his numbers. So now we're just going to name them. We're going to name this first one date. We're going to name this second item here category. And we'll name this third item amount. And so now what I can do is I have this, now that I have this in a tabular format, I can close and load it back to Excel. So I'm going to go to Home. I'm going to go Close and Load To. After clicking Close and Load To, you'll see the import data come up. I'm going to select Pivot Table Report, Existing Worksheet. We're going to go ahead and stick it in column K. I'm going to click OK. See the pivot table come up. And now we'll see I'll be able to do dates, products, and amount. You'll notice that the subtotal and the total show up. So what I'm going to do is over here on the very right-hand corner, there's pivot table fields and queries and connections. I'm going to go into my connection and we're going to fix the data. So I missed a step here. What's beautiful about Power Query is you can see all the steps have been applied. This is the query settings. It records all of them. So all I need to do is come in here and say, I don't want subtotal, I don't want total that was in my data. Click OK, and it's recorded this filtered step. It's taken those out. Now when I close and load my data, that's gone. I can then continue to clean up this pivot table to make it look the same as the one here on Tabular Data. I'm not going to walk through that. You can do that at your own. What I want to focus on is the last example we have here, which is dealing with messy data in Power Query. So now we have this data set here. First thing we're going to do is we're going to put it in a table. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Control T. Or if you don't want to do Control T, you can go to Insert and you can select a table right here. So we'll go ahead and do that. It's created table headers. I have my table. I'm going to go ahead and name it. We're going to name it messy underscore data. I'm going to go ahead and click Enter. And now I'm going to go to the data ribbon again so I can get and transform this data. See, this is right there. And I'm going to click From Table Range. I'm going to load it into here. And you can see the data is a mess that I have right here. As we look at the data, we can look at the first row and say, okay, I don't want that row. We know that doesn't provide me any value. So I can go to Remove Rows. And I'll see there's an option to remove top rows. So I'm going to click on it. And I'm going to say Remove the first row. Now next is I notice there's a row that's all null. So let's see if there's an option to just get rid of that. There is. There's remove blank rows. So I'm going to go ahead and click that and let's see what happens. It got rid of it. Next, I don't want subtotals or totals as we've talked about. So I'll come in and click off on those. And now you can see it's got rid of them. So now I have product SKU and these months. Now we're going to do a few other things to clean it up. I don't want product and SKU in the same column. I want those to be separate columns. So again, I can come here under Home, or I can go under Transform, come to Split Column by Delimiter. In this case, we want a custom delimiter, and it's going to be that first dash. So we want to split it at that. We're going to split it at the leftmost and click OK. So now it's split the widget and the product. So now we need to rename these headers, and we'll rename the columns product, and then we'll just name this one SKU. So next we notice we have the months here, and we have this Q1. Well, we have all 3 months. Q1 is a summary. We want the pivot table to do that. So we'll go ahead and right click here and see what options we have. We have this option to remove a column. So we're going to go ahead and do that. We're going to go ahead and remove that column. So I'm going to click remove and it gets rid of that column. So now I have the 3 columns that I want, but I notice a few issues. One, I have nulls and I don't want nulls. So I can right click on a null anywhere, or I can highlight all 3 columns and click replace values. We're going to highlight all 3. We're going to type in null and we're going to replace the value with the 0. You can see it recorded the next step, replaced value. So now I have that done. The next thing I want to do is I want to change these to be actual dates. So when I on-pivot this, it pivots it correctly. So I'm going to change that to 06/01/2022. We're going to change this one to 07/01/2022. And we'll change this one to be 08/01/2022. You could use end of month. Doesn't have to be beginning of month. That's just a preference. So now I'm going to highlight these 2 columns and come back up to on-pivot columns. And I'm going to on-pivot everything but these 2. And what that does is if I add a month to this table next time, say September, it would automatically get on-pivoted. So I could add it to it. So now I'm going to click on-pivot other columns. And we can see it now did that. So now what I want to do is change this to a date format. You'll notice it left it as a text. So if I come in here and click date, you can see it aligned it on the right side for a date. We'll go ahead and name this date. We'll go ahead and change this to amount. You can see it's there. So now we'll come back to file. And if we close and load, it's just going to load it to a table. We want to do close and load too. So we have the options. So again here, we're going to import the data. We're going to do a pivot table report. We're going to do it in the existing worksheet, and we'll load it here. What we're going to see is I now have this in a format to once again easily create my data, versus when I put this in a pivot table, it's a mess. So if I went ahead and inserted that to a pivot table, say from table range, go ahead and put it in the existing worksheet, put it here. What you're going to notice is I don't have the dates in a clean format. I don't have the product and SKU. Easy format, I have the Q1. I'm going to have totals in the data. So it's going to become really hard to put it in the right pivot table format like this. Okay, as I showed you here, it was difficult to put that in a format similar to here because the data is a mess, as we talked about. So now what I want to do is I want to recap what we've discussed and show how easy it is to refresh something with Power Query as we're nearly done. So what we've talked about is we've talked about tabular data. We've talked about how you should structure it, and you'll see that on the first sheet here with the 5 rules and the examples. Then we went through and showed how easy it is to put that into a pivot table for analysis. Then we did a little bit of an introduction to Power Query. I showed you through the different screens. You can also see information here on the different ribbons and the menus and how to do the basic things in Power Query. So we went through, we summarized our data, and you can see the difference between the two when we cleaned it up. We went ahead and made this data into a table structured data so we could easily analyze it. We did the same with our messy data. The last thing I want to show you before we finish is, let's say I add another month here. So let's say we were able to get the data, we'll say for May. So I'm going to put it on my first month, which is fine. 01/2022 cells. And we'll just say the numbers equal this. We're just going to set it equal to that. And in this one case, we'll set it equal to this number, so it's not the exact same. Here, we'll set it equal to this month. So we got a few different numbers. This should be a summary. So we'll copy this formula over. Oops, copy, not cut. We'll copy this over. And we'll copy this one over. So what we'll do is we'll just set it equal to this. And we have that one there equal as well. So now we have all the numbers we want. We'll make sure that formula is right. I'm going to come down here and hit refresh on my data. Notice May's now there. You can see the 495, the 675, the 695, and the 252. Just by adding that and clicking refresh, Power Query went ahead and added that to the data. I could add more months. So again, just in closing, what we talked about today is how to take advantage of Power Query to quickly and easily clean your data so you can put it in pivot tables and do other analysis on it and have it in a nice structured data format, which is often referred to as tabular data. So thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I hope you found it helpful.